today we are going to discuss the life and achievements of a great electrical engineer, an engineering professor in electrical engineering, the first electrical engineering professor in Ceylon at that time, and also the president of the Institute of Engineers Ceylon at that time, Professor R.H. Paul. Who is there better than Professor Sam Karunaratne to talk about the life and achievements of Professor Paul? So today we invited Professor Sam Karunaratne to recall his memory and the acquaintance he had with Professor Paul in particular. And let me introduce Professor Sam Karunaratne, who was also my teacher in the university. Good evening, Professor.
Good evening.
So let me first ask you, you have been named as a favorite student of Professor Paul, and what are your initial impression about Professor Paul, and how did that all acquaintance build up from the beginning?
Well, I knew Professor Paul even before I entered the university. How it happened was that the University of Ceylon, in the Faculty of Engineering, there were no laboratories at Thurston Road or Reed Avenue, and students and staff, they had to come to the Ceylon Technical College Maradana, where the labs were, to conduct the lab work for the students. So every afternoon, the students and staff from the Faculty of Engineering, they come to the Ceylon Technical College laboratories to undertake their lab work. At that time, I was an assistant in the lab at the Ceylon Technical College, and I had the good fortune of coming to know the staff members, and particularly Professor R.H. Paul. Those days, when you say a professor from the university, it was like a demigod, you see, and it was a big thing to be associated or be near him. So it was my pleasure and privilege to have been assisting Professor Paul to sort out the equipment required for the practical work. So I will go and bring the meters, the various things, and help him, hoping to develop some kind of acquaintance or relationship with this great man.
So you yourself is a pioneer in electrical engineering in this country, and you are humble enough to say that you acquainted with him while you were a lab assistant, right? So
right.
It's another story by itself. So let's talk about it later. So today we'll be discussing the life and the achievements of Professor Paul. So how did he influence you, or what made him to invite you to do engineering?
You know, I had come to the Ceylon Technical College to study engineering, but I found that by the time I came there in 1953, the engineering studies were shifted to the university. There was an alternate path for the technical college students to become engineers by following the in IEE London examinations after studying at the technical college. And that's how I came to the technical college. And after completing my part 1 examination of the IEE London, I was planning to go to England to do my part 2 and become an engineer. But a friend of mine, or in fact it's a lecturer in the technical college, who said, look, this going to England to become an engineer may not be worth. Why not you try to enter the university and get a bachelor's degree in engineering, and if you get a good class, you might even be able to become a lecturer. I took his advice, and since I knew Professor Paul, I entered the university. Fortunately, I had sat the entrance examination and I was successful. And then I entered the university, and it was my pleasure to be associated with Professor Paul, who was the head of the electrical engineering department in the University of Ceylon. His ways of doing things, his teaching, I was enamored. I took a great liking. He's a very tough man, you know, very strict, but sometimes he was amiable. So despite all these things, I just liked him, you know. And I want to be like what I was hoping one day whether I could be like him, you know.
Perhaps you were like him, right? Anyway, because we also adored you. Anyway, during that time, the engineering education was focused based in Colombo, and decision was taken to move it back to move it first to Peradeniya. So this would have obviously had its own pluses and minuses. How do you view this shift, the engineering faculty being moved from Colombo to Peradeniya, and how did you all assimilate that environment, the culture, and did it have any serious impact, or was it easy to adapt to the new environment? How did that happen?
Well, many thought that engineering should be done in a cosmopolitan area in the city where the industries are, but at a higher level, a decision had been taken to shift the entire university to Peradeniya. There was only one university. There was nothing called University of Peradeniya. It was University of Ceylon. And the decision had been made at very high level to move the Faculty of Engineering as well to Peradeniya. There was some reluctance at the start, but when it was shifted, we thought and we realized that it was the best thing to be done, because we were now with other faculties like the arts, the sciences, the law and everything. So it was a university community, whereas the engineering teaching at Thurston Road was in temporary buildings, and it lacked that kind of aura which the students want to have. So shifting was a very good thing. And when in 1964, that is the year that the engineering faculty shifted, the Vice Chancellor, Sir Nicholas Artigaler, gave an order, move to Peradeniya. And we had no choice, and I was at that time a lecturer in the faculty under Professor Paul in the Department of Electrical Engineering. I had come from England after completing my postgraduate studies, and he gave me the responsibility, okay, you move the equipment from the Ceylon Technical Maradana to Peradeniya. It was an arduous task, but I couldn't refuse because he was so good to me, because after completing my degree in 1960, he immediately appointed me as an instructor, then as a temporary assistant lecturer, and then as a permanent assistant lecturer. And then I had to take a decision. I resigned that job and went to UK for higher studies, and he was good enough to give me a better job at the conclusion, despite the fact that I had earlier resigned my job, and this time the job I got was a lecturer with a higher status and higher pay.
So all these had really worked well for you as well as Professor Paul, I'm sure. So you had a very close relationship with Professor Paul, you were told, and you must be knowing quite a lot of things that is not known by many about Professor Paul. So could you elaborate a few of those incidences?
You know, at, when we were studying in Colombo, we just come into the faculty, do our studies or do the teaching and go back home. There was no intermingling or social contact with staff and students. The Faculty of Engineering at Peradeniya, it was where the students, the staff and body were very a close-knit community. We had a lot of time for social events, for social contacts, and to talk to each other and even joke about things and so on. It was a very good situation there. And it is during that time that I came to know about Professor R.H. Paul and his life and times when he was young and how he came up in life. He told me that he won the Ceylon government scholarship to Cambridge University, and he went there, did a degree in engineering. You know that degree in engineering at Cambridge was called BA Cantab, not engineering, BA Cantab, and no engineering, mechanical science tripos. So he got the BA Cantab, and then he had to go for training, and he was sent to a big electrical engineering firm to do his training. He told me a story that the first day he attended the training, the bosses gave him a wheelbarrow and asked him to shift some foundry sand from one place to the other. He said, I'm a Cambridge Wrangler. Wrangler means I'm a first class from Cambridge University. I'm not here to shift foundry sand. And he refused to do it. And you know, this was even reported to the government of Sri Lanka. And when he returned to Sri Lanka, he found it difficult to get a job as an electrical engineer. He told me the only job he could find was to be an instructor in electrical engineering at the Ceylon Technical College with very low pay and so on. You know, he was telling that the others, his batchmates or his colleagues who got government jobs at that time holding high positions, they used to go to the movie houses, you know, go to the balcony. He could only sneak into the second class area, and he felt very shy at times. But with time, of course, he developed his career. And later he applied to be the director of the Ceylon Technical College, Bardana. He was not selected. Instead, a Britisher was selected and made director. He was rather downhearted, but a strange thing happened, he told me. The gentleman who was appointed director was on his way by ship from England to Sri Lanka. On the way, the ship in which he came was had a mishap. It was wartime, World War II, and that gentleman never reached Sri Lanka. And then he got the position as the director of the Ceylon Technical College because the other gentleman was not available to accept that post.
So you are talking about certain mishaps that also have certain fringes or silver lining in those dark clouds. So now with all these setbacks, he was he became a quite illustrious gentleman, and people talk about him. So how did this happen? What made him to be such a great personality even with all those setbacks and disappointments?
I must say, he was a very intelligent person, One thing is to get a first class in Cambridge University is also not an easy thing to do. He was the fact that he had a science degree before he embarked on engineering stood him well, because he knew much high-level mathematics already being a graduate, so he had a head start and he could do very well, and being clever, and also he had very lucid ways of teaching, and his mannerisms, his gesticulations. The students try to even imitate, I can still remember. He was talking about the circuit breakers. He used to say, inadvertent operation of the circuit breaker. When he says that, even when we became lecturers, we tell the students the inadvertent operation of circuit breakers. It's a kind of a, in the university teaching those days, it is the professor who calls the tune. You see, others just follow him. It's not like what it is now. It's like the older system. It's the guru and the shishya type. We always try to imbibe the qualities of the teacher.
So you are talking about the importance of teaching and the very character of the teacher. So which I think even your students still emulate. So now going back to something in a very informal manner, are there any anecdotes that you remember about him?
When we were at Peradeniya, we had plenty of time for social gatherings and talk of simple things about life and so on. And some of the stories, anecdotes he told me, I can still remember. He told me once that while he was in England, he was ill and he had to undergo an operation. Then he consented for this operation, and everything was prepared by the surgeons to conduct the operation. While he was being wheeled into the operating theatre, he told the surgeon, "Look, I'm not willing to go through this operation." Those surgeons and doctors, they were furious because they had made all arrangements. He had already consented. He said, you have already consented and we have made all arrangements to do this operation. He said, yes, at a weak moment I may have consented, but now I don't want to go through this operation. And he did not undergo that operation. This is one of his stories, you see. And also, I can tell more about him. He had many stories to tell me. One of the things he told me when we were at a seminar, I was seated next to him. The speaker was introducing the next speaker, and he said, this speaker, I don't want to mention the name, is the first wrangler from Cambridge University from Sri Lanka. Then Professor Paul sort of bent towards me. He said, it's wrong. I was the first. He did not take any offense. But he just told me, no, he was not the first. I was the first, he said.
Anything in lighter vein?
Pardon?
Anything more in lighter vein?
Yeah. He went on sabbatical leave to England, and he came back and he brought a fairly big size station wagon. So I asked him, sir, why do you buy such a station wagon? He said, I have many children. I think he had maybe 5 children. So for us to go, I need a bigger vehicle, so that's why. Then when he came back, I saw him driving this all by himself and no one. I said, sir, you brought this vehicle for your children to go. Where are the children? He says, they are grown up and they don't want to go with me. So now I'm driving. So I said, why you should have brought a smaller car. My bad planning, he said.
Okay, sir. Now, he died some in 1970s, late 70s. How did you feel his demise?
Oh my goodness. I was kind of devastated by the news. You know, he was more than a teacher to me. I felt that I had lost my elderly parent, and that was the kind of feeling. My relationship with him was very close. As I told you earlier, I resigned my job from the university, and I went to the Department of Government Electrical Undertakings as a junior assistant electrical engineer. I expected to have an office staff to support me. And what did I get? When I went there to the Macklem Road, I was asked to sit by the office assistant, one Mr. Stock. And he gave me a big book. And he said, read this. The title was about government procedure. I told him that I have not come here to study about government procedure. I'm an electrical engineer. He said, you read this. Then at 3 p.m., I told Mr. Stock, I have to go to the university to meet my professor. He said, you can't go, you can go at 4:30. I said, I'm going anyway. And I left that place and went to Professor Paul and said, sir, this Public Service Commission appointment in the Department of Government Electrical Engineering is no good for me. I had to read books about procedure. I don't want to go there. Please give me back my job. But he said, you resigned your job. I said, yes, I know, but it was my mistake. I want the job back. And he was kind enough to give me the job. I resigned that job to go to England. When I came back, he gave me a better job. You see, so he was very kind to me. We had established a very cordial relationship, and his loss was unbearable.
So I think you have shared with us some of the very personal messages and sort of the impression he has made on you. I think those are the days where you had an excellent relationship between the students and the lecturers and especially professors. And they didn't keep anything, a groomsteer kind of thing was not at all, known to anybody.
Yeah.
You see,
and more than that, it's not a case of the teaching at the university. Those days was different from now, because it's not a case of teaching so much. The professor comes and naturally he teaches you something, but he will enthuse you or he will encourage to study by yourself. He'll say something, he'll give some equations, and the proof of it, he says, go and read up this thing and find it for yourself. So we had to do our own studying rather than that, and the professor was there as a figurehead and give some direction towards our learning.
So that you think is very effective way of teaching, and I'm sure most of the lecturers even now or the professors will learn from such examples set by people like Professor Paul and also yourself. So we wish you also all the best, and let's work towards that accomplishment of better engineering education for tomorrow.
I tried very hard to be like Professor Paul.
Thank you.